Hi, this is Team Cookie Army presenting an explainer video on content provider. Have you ever wondered whenever you add some new contact in your contact application on your phone, how does that new contact get included on your WhatsApp? The answer is the work of content provider. A content provider has three layers and it's used to share data between applications. The three layers are data layer, data access layer, and business layer. Introduction. First, what is a content provider? It is used to store and retrieve data and make it accessible to all applications. It is the only way to share data across various other applications on a mobile device or Android. Since there's no common storage area that all Android packages can access, two types of content providers are Android's built-in content providers with pre-built-in applications for users and custom content providers that users can create on their own. Implementation. How to make your data public. The first choice, you can create your own content provider extending the content provider class in your Java application. The second choice, you can add the data to an existing provider if there's one that controls the same type of data and also have permission to write to it. Content provider implementation has three basic guidelines. The first one being all content providers implement a common interface. The second guideline being how a content provider actually stores its data under the cover is up to its designer. And the third one being clients access content providers indirectly through the content resolver object. Next comes Uniform Resource Identifier. A content provider uses a URI to identify data. Each content provider exposes a public URI wrapped as a URI object that uniquely identifies a dataset. Note that a content provider that controls multiple datasets with multiple tables exposes a separate URI for each one. All URIs for providers begin with the standard string format content : / enclosed within double quotes. And the content scheme identifies the data as being controlled by a content provider. A URI has a standard structure format. It has four components, the first being a standard prefix indicating that the data is controlled by a content provider and it's never modified. The second part shows the authority of the URI. It identifies the content provider through a name. And the third is the part that the content provider uses to determine what kind of data is being requested. And the fourth is the ID of the specific record being requested.
So next is the CRUD operations in content providers. So these are the ways in which the data is being modified in the content provider. First, you can add new records, adding new values to existing records, batch updating existing records, and deleting records. First, let's look at adding records. To add a new record to a content provider, first set up a map of key value pairs in a content values object, where each key matches the name of a column in the content provider and the value is the desired value for the new record in that column. Then we have to call content resolver.insert method and pass it in the URI of the provider and the content values map. Next is batch updating records. To batch update a group of records, call the content resolver.update method with the columns and values to change and the batch records being updated. Deleting a record or records. To delete a single record, call the method content resolver.delete with the URI of a specific row. To delete multiple rows, call the method content resolver.delete with the URI of the type of record to delete and an SQL where class defining which rows to be deleted. Now let's see about creating a content provider. Steps for creating content provider. First, set up a system for storing the data. Next, extend the content provider class to provide access to the data. And then declare the content provider in the manifest file of your application. Initiation of the content provider class. First, let's look at extending the content provider class. So we define a content provider subclass to expose the data to others using the conventions expected by content resolver and cursor objects. Principally, this means implementing 6 abstract methods declared in the content provider class. Starting an activity. Define a public static final URI named content underscore URI. This is the string that represents the full content, the URI that your content provider handles. You must define a unique string for this value. The best solution is to use the fully qualified class name of the content provider. Usually it's made lowercase. Declaring the content provider. To let the Android system know about the content provider you have developed, declare it with an element in the application's Android manifest.xml file. So what are the advantages of using content providers? First is platform-wide pattern for data sharing. And then the content providers enables data syncing across many applications, and then granular control over the permissions for accessing data, and then we can run asynchronous queries through content providers. That's all from us. Thank you so much for listening.